All right, raise your hand if you think that we're using the internet to its maximum potential. All right, the human race now has a nervous system, and the best that we could possibly do is have social networking, YouTube, and Tinder. Is that the complete history of the internet going forward? I certainly hope not. So there's some of us that think we could do much better than that, and we're creating something called Pursuance. Our goal with Pursuance is to amplify the efforts of activists, journalists, and nonprofits the world over. So what kinds of things are we doing in order to accomplish this? So we are creating secure collaboration software that makes groups of people more effective. And our ultimate goal with this is to create an ecosystem of opposition to institutionalized injustice. So there's kind of the general platform, how do we have more effective collaboration that's make it secure, and then there's specifically what our team wants to do with this software, and that has to do with opposing injustice of various sorts. So what specifically are we trying to amplify here? So our founder, Barrett Brown, he's a journalist, he's an activist. The sort of sequence of events that led to Pursuance being created in the first place is Barrett was doing sort of crowdsourced journalism, and he was doing a lot of online activism with a group called Anonymous, you may remember. So they were doing a variety of things. They were protesting Scientology, and they ended up doing that very effectively. Actually, a city that I was in for about 12 years, Santa Barbara, they had to close their Scientology sort of location there. Anonymous does a variety of other things that is generally positive. So being able to more effectively coordinate various things like that is important, and people don't have a good way of doing that right now. So that's the sort of the activism side. There's crowdsourced research and journalism. That's also what some of what Barrett was doing back in the day, and what he and a team of researchers, all volunteer researchers, found around 2011 or so was okay. So there's this hacker that hacked into a private intelligence contractor, dumped 70,000 emails onto the internet, and then Barrett and others initiated this crowdsourced journalism project to try to go through those emails, try to understand this sort of privatized, almost a mini CIA or NSA, where you could pay a group of hackers to hack into your enemies or spread misinformation and so on. So this is very interesting. So here's a slide from a presentation created by Palantir, which you may recall is a company started by Peter Thiel, who funded Trump and has done some other interesting things. This slide presentation is called the WikiLeaks thread. So the background here is that Bank of America actually hired this team Themis. They hired Palantir and these other private companies to try to destroy WikiLeaks. That was their mission. They were doing that because WikiLeaks was threatening to publish information that would be sort of damaging to, if they're going to expose a bunch of corruption in the banking industry. Bank of America was worried it was going to be them. Their stock dropped like 5% in one day, and then we now know that they were hiring this group. So this is something that was uncovered, again, through volunteers doing crowdsourced journalism. So here's one of these slides saying, okay, we can create disinformation campaigns and do cyber attacks against the infrastructure of WikiLeaks. And they're like, well, Glenn Greenwald does a good job of defending WikiLeaks. How do we destroy Glenn Greenwald? Like, well, here's who he's connected to. Let's see, we think that even though people, without the support of people like WikiLeaks or with people like Glenn, WikiLeaks would fold. So they were looking at Glenn Greenwald and WikiLeaks and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, there's very interesting backstory of the kinds of crowdsourced work that led to Pursuance, and they felt like they could have been even more effective, even though they exposed this, and because they exposed this, a couple people went to jail. They were targeted for exposing the Department of Justice's involvement in this activity. But we're also interested in having Pursuance amplify the efforts of nonprofits. We really think that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of volunteers, a lot of potential that we could leverage of people on the internet. It turns out the Bernie Sanders campaign also realized this, and they said, hey, how about we treat volunteers more like employees, and that's part of what made them so effective. So there's a great line that I found in a book recently that captures some of the way that we see this, and they said, your most valuable asset isn't your employees, I told the executive. Your most valuable asset is the thousands of people who want to work for you for free, and you don't let them. So there's a lot of potential out there that we need to be harnessing. Briefly, here's roughly what Pursuance looks like. This is, I wish we were zoomed in further, but here's sort of a hierarchy of different tasks trying to accomplish police accountability. Something very unique about this is you can assign tasks not just to a particular person, but to another group. So we envision this sort of network of all these different groups that kind of play their strengths. You know, hey, we need to file a FOIA request. Let's ask the FOIA group that specializes in that if they can fill that out for us, and then we get the results. End-to-end encrypted chat is included. A bunch of other features I don't have time to get into. There's some interesting projects we're involved with that we're interested in onboarding first into the Pursuance system. As Barrett likes to say, for the first time in history, any individual may now collaborate with any other individual on the planet, and we're excited about leveraging that potential. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dakota, for SF. 3 of our 4 main volunteers we recruited from here, which has been really helpful.
Cool. So I think we have time for a question or two.
Any questions? Pursuanceproject.org, by the way, is the website.
Go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can do it. So a question analogous to one asked earlier. How, you know, if it's about addressing injustice and positive change, how do you decide what that is and keep it in line with that?
Sure, good question. So the question is, you know, if we're fighting for positive change, how do we ensure that that's kind of what is done with our software, right? So this is about my favorite question. We do get this a fair amount. The answer is so twofold. Number one, we expect our server to be sort of the biggest server, and we are setting the culture there, and we're, for the foreseeable future, only inviting groups that we trust and that are doing things that we approve of. So, you know, if these people are able to make the most out of not just the software, but the ecosystem of all these different groups, you know, pushing in a variety of ways, then, you know, if there's somebody sort of ostracized and they don't, you know, they can't join the server, maybe they have their own. So there's that, number one. Number two, you know, the underlying assumption there, you know, or the underlying concern is, you know, how you know, is it okay to create technologies that could possibly be used for negative purposes? And of course, any technology, you know, anyone could buy a car and run people over with it, or take a microphone and hit people with it, and you use things that, you know, for malicious purposes. But provided that you are creating something that is clearly going to be used for radically more positive purposes than negative, and we do have partial control over that because of the network aspect. And you know, if you believe in the open society and, you know, allowing people to have open source software that they can do what they want with, then you know, we do want to have sort of 1,000 flowers bloom here. But short answer is we're able to control to some extent what is done, at least with the sort of biggest mass of different people using it. And you know, I challenge people to come up with anything that's ever been created that's not a weapon that has done more harm than good, or anything like it. Lots of things could be used negatively. In reality, they are not. But yeah, if somebody wants to, you know, harass people on Twitter or whatever, they don't need sophisticated tools. They can use any messaging app that exists in the world, and so on. But we're very excited about setting the initial culture and pushing back against injustice, and we hope that you join us.
Steve.